Welcome to the What's Up Verdict podcast. We fashion ourselves cinematic judge and jury. My name is JJ Crowder. I'm here with my co-hosts Mattson
Better red than dead.
and Alec Purchase.
Let's get it.
We appreciate you tuning in. Go ahead, tell a fuck. I don't even know what to say, guys. It's been so long.
Tell a friend about us. Come on, Jay.
Dude, I know. Go ahead, hit the like, subscribe, bell notification buttons first. That way you can keep up with all of our episodes, and then help us grow the podcast by telling a friend, family member, superhero that you know, some person that runs really fucking weird. That works as well. Yeah. Stupid. Yeah, so it's fun. We appreciate you guys being here listening. With that, we are here to record The Flash. It was released June 16th, 2023. It was written by Christina Hodson and Joby Harold. It was directed by Andy Muschietti. It stars Ezra Miller, Michael Keaton, Sasha Calle, Ben Affleck. This list is weird. Like Michael Shannon, Jeremy Irons, and Ron Livingston. Maribel Verdú, her too. This movie has me so off kilter, guys. Like, I don't even know. Like, so that's the list I'm going to read, and then we'll talk about more. But before we do this, let's get the biggest bitch and moan I've heard about with this movie out of the way, and the one that I was like completely and utterly distracted by throughout this movie. Before I do that, though, let me go ahead and read a synopsis because, sure. Barry Allen uses his super speed to change the past, but his attempt to save his family creates a world without superheroes, forcing him to race for his life in order to save the future. The synopsis is just as confusing as the story. CGI in this movie was balls, dude. Like, some of the worst I've ever seen. I thought we reached peak garbage ass CGI with Superman in Justice League. Nah. That was great shit compared to 90% of this CGI. It was
it meant to look good? Like, especially the time travel part. Was I supposed to be? Oh, that's human actor form. It got to the point where I was like, no, it's not meant to look like that. But then they flash right back to Ezra Miller, who the Flash, who was the human. I was like, man, this is back and forth. It's not helping them.
Well, here's the worst. Here's what I'm going to read this from the director, Andy Muschietti, and you guys tell me what you think, and then I'll tell you what I think. So the director's been getting trolled on Twitter since it came out about the shit CGI, like how bad it is. And it sent a quote, and here's his quote. The idea, of course, is we're in the perspective of the Flash. Everything is distorted in terms of lights and textures. We enter this water world, which is basically being in Barry's POV. It was part of the design, so if it looks a little weird to you, that was intended. There's the quote. What do you guys think?
Don't practice extreme ownership and pretend like it was intended. Blame the shit that was going on with strikes in the CGI department or whatever else. Fuck. Pass the rock to someone else.
I mean, that's where you're the director. Just go look down the food chain and who do you want to chop their balls off or plug up? I can't say that. I'm just try to be respectful of both people here, but that's bad. That's an over explanation. It's just like just say it was bad or say the budget wasn't there. Like, just be honest or just say, you know what, wasn't very good because we're not stupid.
Yeah. You have an easy out in this movie, by the way. You have a couple of them, actually.
Because it's a throwaway.
Ezra Miller fucking went off the rails right after or during filming, after filming. You can't get him back for reshoots. You can't, went off the rails, okay? That's excuse number one. Doesn't work so much for the CGI as well, other than you were forced to do some shitty CGI with him because you couldn't do reshoots. Boom. Excuse number two, which makes way more sense, is in post-production, Warner Bros. Was going through massive amounts of change in their leadership, their company structure. They were sold. They changed the CEO of the DC universe to a new guy. Like, they completely overhauled it. So you know that their budget got cut. You didn't get extra budget for this movie. It was way over budget to begin with, but you're not getting extra budget to fix your CGI horse shit or get high quality, because this is they also had to rebrand this movie as the soft reboot for the DC universe because of the change. So just own it. Yeah, our CGI blows. Don't try to tell me you made it look like shit on purpose, because here's the other problem with that theory is you can say that it was designed to be in a water world to make, the POV of a speedster, so everything's a little funky. But it wasn't just when he was running that it was shit. Like, it was garbage when it was supposed to be a normal POV. Like, I was watching it going, this looks terrible. It was distracting. And we talk about CGI quite often here, but I'm usually in the middle. I'm like, look, I know not all CGI is going to be great. This was terrible. And I went into this movie trying to be gentle. Like, I really was. Like, I had low expectations, but then I had heard a lot of apparently fake great things about this movie, because, like, coming down the pike, you'd hear all this shit about, oh, it's awesome, it's done well, the story's great, the acting's great. So I was like, okay, I know there's always some fake reviews and things like that are there to bolster a movie and get people to go see it. But I was like, there's too much positive coming out of this for it to be that bad. No, even going in soft and with very low expectations, I was kind of hopeful. I had 20, 30 minutes in, I'm like, the fuck am I watching? Like, this is ass. And it's terrible because it's my favorite DC character.
See, I was in that camp kind of where I was pleasantly surprised, but CGI is not at the top of my list of things that like bother me about a movie. For me, it's more, did I enjoy and have fun? And so, like, even in that terrible CGI sequence where he's like saving the babies, I was giggling because he sticks one of them in a microwave.
Yeah.
So I didn't care about the bad CGI because you had this humor component going with it. Because I went in with below bare bones expectations, and I left kind of going, I wasn't upset. Like, I was pleasantly surprised because I expected to absolutely shit on it. But yeah, the CGI.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible.
And whoever this Paschetti guy is, don't take credit.
Yeah, yeah. Don't try to own that shit.
No, pass the buck. We did that on purpose. Bullshit.
Yeah. Well, and it's not like this guy's made some decent movies. Like, he's not like an out of control director that's like, the second coming of like anybody great. But he's made, like, he did the new It movies. Like, that was him. He did Mama, which is a very weird horror movie, but it was
seen that one.
It was decent. He was a producer on the Netflix show Lock and Key, which is based on a really cool series of books. And it was pretty good. Like, he directed a couple, I think, and then he produced them. But, like, yeah, he's done some decent movies. And then this, I was like, fuck. It was rough. Anyway, but kind of to your point, there were moments where I laughed. Like, I did find some comedy in it, but I also felt like it got tiresome. And I guess as an overall theme, this isn't one of our topics, but it's a long ass movie, longer than it should have been.
It was dragging for me there for quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, we already know how I feel.
Yeah, 2.5 hours is a little much for this.
Well, it didn't help with when they slow things down, and I know they need to do it, but there's times where you probably added solid 5 minutes of just doing that alone, and then some of the exposition. I will say some of the dialogue was actually surprisingly better than I thought it was going to be in this movie. there's just so many things surrounding it, and the length, and just Ezra Miller being someone I really don't like. He's in like the Aquafina category for me, where I'm just like, no, and it's just a lot to overcome.
Yeah, I feel bad for everyone involved in the movie besides them, because they've created a lot of issues for this film because they're nuts. There's something wrong with them and they need to get help. And I'm not judging. Like, look, we all have our own issues, but I have a hard time like not having some issues based on what they've done. And yeah, anyway, there it is. I don't want to get too far into Ezra Miller and their issues, but yeah, they didn't help this movie at all.
Can we talk about the noodle arms yet?
Oh fuck, dude.
We already know. For our core listeners,
waiting for this.
We know how JJ feels, but then when it was on again, because it's been a while since I've seen a Flash movie since like Justice League, and I was like, man, like, because I'm the one that added this topic, and I was just trying to put salt in the wound for Jay. But we had to watch it multiple times. I was like, man, every time. Why couldn't he run like Tom Cruise? Because that's how people run. What's this elongated? It just who I don't know where DC said that's the way to do it, and Warner Bros. Is like that, but they're dumb. Like, I don't get it.
I don't either, and I've never understood it.
I had a thought.
Okay.
Because the way that they have Barry Allen whipping his arms around looks like an inline skater. And the way he runs is like he's always in the middle on the yellow line of the road, right? He moves like an inline skater. So I do wonder if it was like a conscious choice. I don't agree with it because you've got Ezra Miller whipping their arms around like, half-cooked spaghetti. And it's distracting. So distracting. But the actual conscious choice, like it would make sense to me if you explained the reasoning behind it. And it doesn't take too long to throw something in there real quick about, hey, why do you run like that? Oh, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You give a short 30-second explanation to make it all go away instead of just having it look even dumber as fuck when he's running slow motion.
I thought they were going to make fun of themselves when he lost his powers and was running in a circle and it didn't work. And that his other self asked him, like, why are you running like that? And then because that could have been a great joke because they kind of made fun of themselves, and it really would have been not that I still would have hated it and it's a stupid decision, but it would have been funny.
Mm-hmm. I don't get it, and it drives me crazy because even the inline skate, and here's the stupid part, is it was better in this film than it was in Justice League, because in Justice League it wasn't even like an inline skater. It was like he was like trying to throw a discus is what it looked like. He was swinging his arms all out wide and like he was like, or like he was DJing or like wax on, wax off shit while he's running. In this one, at least he toned it down, but there was a couple of moments where it was really obvious. And I was like, oh fuck, there it is again. Because it doesn't look natural. It doesn't look right. It looks dumb. It's a dumb choice. It completely ruined it. But then, and the worst part for me was I actually saw one of the trailers showed the Flash running and it didn't look like he was doing it. And so I was like, oh, maybe they finally got him to go, you look like a fucking moron. Stop it. Run normal. And then he didn't. I was like, what a fucking letdown. Because I was like, this sucks. Anyway.
But is that Ezra Miller's decision or is it someone else saying we need to just ask the director again?
We'll who knows?
Don't ask the director. He's going to give some bullshit answer.
Well, it wouldn't have been Muschietti because that would have been that came
Predates.
About in Justice League. So that would have been a Zack Snyder thing. So maybe it had to do with the,
4:3 aspect ratio just didn't fit. Oh my gosh, what a dick.
Maybe it played better in black and white. You don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. I do want to talk about Supergirl because I'm kind of conflicted with Supergirl. Well, okay. I've got our topics here. Maybe I should rearrange them a little bit. How about we talk about the multiverse first? And I say that only because I think I need to explain Flashpoint because I'm assuming you guys haven't read the Flashpoint comics or don't know anything about Flashpoint.
My level of nerd is not your level of nerd, JJ.
Yeah. So Flashpoint is It's one of like, so Marvel has their Infinity comics, right? The Infinity War comics, Infinity Saga comics, whatever, where it was like a big crossover event, like almost all their major superheroes were involved. Well, the Flashpoint was one of those for DC, and that's loosely, and I mean very loosely, what this is based on. The premise being Barry Allen going back in time to save his mother. It plays out very differently in the comics. And the worst part about it, the part that frustrates me the most is, especially with all the cameos that we have from the current and past Batman, Superman. I mean, obviously, Henry Cavill wasn't in there, so that one's not happening. But you could have, and we'll talk about the other ones later, but you could have had something that played out or not include Superman, which is fine because they replaced Superman's character with Supergirl in this version, which I'm okay with. And it plays out similar in the comics to where he's not, Flash can't find him. Nobody's even heard of Superman, but it's not the Russian government that has him. It's the American government has him, and they've had him since he was a child, locked away from the sun because he doesn't get his powers, right? So, but with all the Batmans, all the cameos, even the post-credit scene with Aquaman, you had Wonder Woman shows up. Like, you're obviously bringing in these characters that are continuing on in the new DC universe. You could have done a more comic accurate version of Flashpoint and it would have made sense. And it actually is a pretty adaptable storyline in that Barry goes back, but then when he wakes up, he doesn't remember going back. He has memory loss because his memories are readjusting to the fact that he changed the timeline so that his mother was still alive. And before he figures out that it was him, he blames everything on Reverse Flash, which is his main villain in the comics, Eobard Thawne. And so he's looking for Thawne to try to get him to reverse it because Barry doesn't have powers in the new Flashpoint. So what they could have done, because they already had these cameos, is one of the big changes in this new universe is Batman is Thomas Wayne, not Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne is the one that gets killed in the alley. So Thomas Wayne, his dad, becomes Batman. He's a brutal Batman, like similar to what we saw. Like, he's not afraid to kill people. Like, he's brutal. Okay. The other piece of that is Superman's not there. Aquaman and Wonder Woman are having a civil, like this giant war where most of Europe is underwater because of the Atlanteans. They flood most of Western Europe, and the Amazonians take over the other half of the world. And so you have Aquaman is Emperor Aquaman, okay, and Wonder Woman leads the other side, and they are at this constant war against each other. And so it's a very interesting, but you have both of them in this fucking movie in some way, shape, or form. You could have done that, or at least hinted at it. You don't have to go down the big inroads that the comics do for those two sides of the story, but you can imply it instead of bringing back Zod in some weird ass decision, right? And then the whole idea is to find, then you get to introduce Reverse Flash, which is a very interesting character, who's the one that tells, now that Flashpoint has happened, Reverse Flash is manipulating events so that he can become a hero, because that's what his characters always wanted, was to be the Flash, but he ends up going the other direction. And then Barry does have to get help from his friends to get his powers back, and does it in a different way, but in similar, like he almost dies by trying to get electrocuted with electrocuting himself, and then he gets additional help. There's a lot to go in there, but you could have done a version of that without all the weird shit. And then, of course, the Superman thing is that he's the reason, and this, Mattson, answers your question when we talk about Supergirl and why was she so weak. It's because she's never been in the sun. But they never explain that there was one line where it's like, she's been in here for a long time, or she might have been in here since being a little girl. But it's in the comic version, it's said that Superman was in there, Kal-El was in there as a baby or as a child at least, and so they're powered by the sun, the
Yeah, I
yellow
get that.
sun.
I get
So
part of my question. I guess keep going, and then I have a question to that.
I was just say that's why she was so weak and she kept getting tired, because she'd been out of the sun for probably the majority of her life, so she hadn't built up that quick rebound that like we see that Superman has when he gets hit with the nuke in, Batman v Superman or whatever it was, and then he recovers very quickly because of the sun, but that's because he's been in it his whole life. And in the Flashpoint, he's weak that same way because he's not been in the sun. So he recovers and he gets his strength and he can fly and he can do all that, but he's not the same Superman because he's just now being introduced full time to the sun that way. So his body's got to adjust and get used to that and control it.
It just felt like they made Zod OP'd against Supergirl because he brought up that little thin stabby blade, and I was like, oh, okay, but that never would have happened to Superman. And I thought the only thing that could pierce Superman was, I guess that's metal from Krypton, so maybe that's why it worked then.
It's not. It's because she hadn't been in the sun long enough. Like, she was almost impervious, but with someone with Zod's strength.
So she was like basically like Zod, but Zod's just more power. He's just strong, badass dude, and he just whooped her. And she wasn't like Superman who had drunk the radiation of the sun and was like super, but then Zod honed in on his battle. Yeah, I got it. Okay, that makes more sense to me.
And that's why Superman was able to take down Zod in his movie, was because Superman has been absorbing that radiation his whole life.
Yeah.
Zod was able to fight back in his soldier because they were born to be soldiers, so they had skills that Superman didn't. But in that section, he gained powers and he'd been there and he was figuring it out like he did in Superman or in the Man of Steel. But she hadn't been around to be able to absorb. Like, he would have hit Superman, he just would have went flying regardless of the blade. She wasn't built that way yet because she hadn't absorbed enough radiation for long enough to be
that makes sense
to everything. But they don't explain it well. Like, if you're not a nerd and you don't understand like the concept of that, you're gonna be like,
I figured it was that way, but the way with how Superman is set up, you're like, well, wait, if this is this universe's version of Superman, which happens to be a woman, this doesn't add up. And that's where they didn't reprogram the user to say, hey, like, this isn't what you know based on what you said. And I know they have to do it differently in a movie, but like you said, they didn't, for the average watcher, they didn't set that part up very well because it was confusing.
Yeah. Well, and they could have, Barry Allen's a genius. So one extra line of him saying, oh, she's not going to be like my Superman because she's been in this fucking dome for her whole life. Like, that's all he had to say. And now,
like when they're fighting, being like, hey, we got to help her out. She's going to be strong, but I don't think she's going to be like my Superman kind of thing. You'd be like, oh, yeah, makes sense. Cool.
That's it. That's all we needed. But instead, we get, wait, what the, did she just get stabbed and it didn't do anything? Because I was like, that's weird. Because they acted like she was full power, right?
Yeah, they did.
Until that moment. And then I was like,
that's it. Because that's where I was like, wait, that happened like way too fast.
Yeah. Other than that little moment where she was beating Zod's ass and then she kind of had that like dizzy spell. And that, but that's not an explanation. That's more confusing than anything else. So yeah, it was done poorly. And I think that was because they were trying to incorporate pieces of Flashpoint that don't fit without the rest of Flashpoint. And so like that was and to me, there was no character development whatsoever until the very end of this movie. And the most of that character development was like a 6 or 7 minute sequence of a conversation with Dark Flash. And like, I was like, with Flashpoint, like, you could have made a movie where this entire thing is about consequence, which is what Flashpoint's all about. And instead we get this running hour-long, not as funny as it should have been, duo of Barry Allen's that had, like, it was a comedy show for an hour, and then great to see Michael Keaton back for 20 minutes, and then we get this final fight sequence, right? That leads us in. I was like, you could have had for 2.5 hours, you could have had a pretty decent recreation of Flashpoint with actual character development and some interesting cameos like Wonder Woman and freaking Arthur being on opposite sides of a world war, leading two superpowered peoples with no one in between. There's no Superman to balance it out, right? To say, I'll beat both your asses if you don't fucking knock it off. So it's such an interesting thing. And I feel like they wasted a great storyline that wasn't that hard to adapt, in my opinion. Now, I'm no filmmaker, but
one thing I have to say is I did enjoy Michael Keaton with Bruce Wayne explaining the multiverse in that way. I was like, oh, that actually worked quite well. I was like, Marvel should take a page out of that, because I was like, oh. I left and I was like, spaghetti sauce. It's perfect.
Yeah, it was funny. It was funny. And I think for me, and I don't know, this kind of goes into, Alec, your topic of funnier than expected, and that is, I thought Michael Keaton was hilarious. But Michael Keaton is always hilarious to me, so I thought he saved the parts of this movie he was in. That was my opinion on him anyway.
I'd agree, but I mean, so going into this, right, because DC's are always a typically darker universe.
Yeah.
Right? And then you put, double Barry Allen, and I found myself chuckling at stuff, and I was like, why am I laughing?
Yeah.
Like, I shouldn't be laughing, but when he's like hunting down metahumans, and he calls up Aquaman's dad, and he's like, your wife, the Queen of Atlantis, and he looks at the couch. No.
Yeah, that was funny. I did chuckle
I was
at that.
dying. Or the broccoli thing, where he's like, here, taste it, so much flavor. Yeah, no, it's terrible, huh? It's awful. It was like this shouldn't be funny, but for whatever reason, I don't know if it was, the day I watched it, I was just in a good mood or what, but I was cackling at just about everything, even down to when Barry number 1 is trying to teach Barry number 2 how to do everything, and he gets halfway through his sentence, and he's like, oh, it shifts through the floor. I mean,
I did chuckle. Even I was like, oh, they hit a good level of humor.
I was surprised because I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting more doom and gloom. My parents are dead. Boo-hoo, whine, whine, whine. Kind of the typical stuff you get in DC and comic books. But I was like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be laughing. That's a dumb joke, but I love it. And I just kept laughing. So it was shocking to me because it's not what I expected. And that might be a contributing factor as well, is that I was caught off guard by the jokes and I just laughed. And then it just, steamrolled into the next laugh. But I was like, this movie should not be this funny. And it was.
I did laugh at a handful of I think I was ashamed though after I would laugh, that I was laughing at it. I laughed despite myself when he was saving all the babies, and the first one, he jumps past the babies to get food.
This candy bar,
and he's shoving a burrito in his face before he sends it off to knock the scalpels out of the way. I was like, I shouldn't be laughing at this, but I was. And that's that's my own problem, but that's my thing with the movie is I would laugh and then I would go, stop fucking laughing at this shit. It's not good. But I would still laugh.
The Eric Stoltz in Back to the Future.
Yeah, that part when he's like, it was on it. He's like, that's not even the right body part, and he had lifted it up. I was like, that was
it's upside down.
I was like, that was gold right there. I was like, there's no way. Yeah. But my favorite one was when Wonder Woman puts her little lasso of truth on Batman and Barry Allen, because Batman's saying some stuff he realized he's trying to untie. He's like,
yeah, he's trying to untie it. Well, the funny part about it is and I'm okay with it because the lasso of truth, they have some funny moments like that in the comics, but it doesn't usually induce you to just say random shit like it does in the movie universe, which I'm okay with because it's funny like that. But yeah, Batman's just I would never admit that to anyone.
My ego is way too big to say thank you to anybody else.
I've heard of sex, but I've never
experienced.
He looks you never come back from that, do you? Stop talking.
I thought they did a pretty good. I think they crossed a little bit where it almost felt like the most recent Thor, where they forced a couple at times. But I actually appreciated, like Alec was saying, I appreciated the level of humor. But at times I was like, "There's no where's the grit? Where's like the dark where it what I have come to love about DC?" And there wasn't enough of that in this movie. They got too far removed from that. So I guess I wanted a little bit better of a balance, but DC's proven that they can put some jokes in. And I was like, all right, if you get a little bit more of that vibe, but still stay true to your roots, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And I think that's what I wanted when I talk about the Flashpoint, because one of the big bases of Flashpoint, like I said, he doesn't remember that he did it. He thinks it's someone else, like a villain that did this, right? Because it's a villainous move. Like, yeah, it's not a good look to do what he did. And then he absorbs the speed force so that it goes away. Like, that's why he doesn't have his powers. And he's made it so he doesn't remember, he doesn't have his powers, and he's on the verge of completely losing his memory and it shifting to this new universe and so that no one will remember what it was. And so there's a lot of opportunity for that dark and heavy reflection. And the whole time, the Reverse Flash is in here, like, basically throwing it in his face that you fucked up, dude. This is your fault and your problem. And you either have to make a choice of Mama Allen or the world.
Yeah,
You know what I
the
mean?
moral implications are profound and compelling and interesting, and it didn't land in the way that it should have felt grand and heavy and serious. And it just never, because that terrible CGI, for instance, in the spinning orb and the way that they showed the time, which I like the idea of it was interesting. I was like, all right, I'll give them the concept, because it wasn't normally, it would have just been like a montage flashback, or you kind of have like a slider, I liked
Yeah.
how they presented it. It just didn't land. But you needed, because you guys, you know me, I love movies that make you think, and you're like, what would I do? Like, would I really go back and be Barry Allen and just screw the world? I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it for me, my mom, my family. And it never really felt like that. I needed more of that weight, because that's an interesting conundrum. If you have the power to do it, shoot, man, there's going to be people that are straight up going to go do it. To say I wouldn't do it, like if Tay died tomorrow and I had the power to go do it, to say I wouldn't probably do it, or at least very much entertain it, that's not true. Anyone that says that is a liar.
Yeah.
And I wanted more of that, because that's a juicy topic.
Mm-hmm.
I
I
like
did like
more Bruce Wayne, where they talked about it a little bit, but because I miss Ben Affleck, I really liked him, and I was like, man, just give us some more exposition. That could have been really cool. Could have been awesome.
Oh yeah. Well, and I liked the part too, like, because the one emotional piece that I really felt they got right was Barry Allen #2 being so compelled and driven to be a superhero by his other self
Mm-hmm.
that he eventually becomes the villain, which happens a lot to Barry Allen in the comics, by the way. There's a lot of flashes and not all of them are good. And there's a lot of subtlety with that's one of the reasons that the Flash is one of my favorite comic characters, because he's goofy and he's awkward and he's funny, but he's also got some pretty heavy shit that he deals with in his comics, typical of DC. But I liked, because he was so goofy as the regular Barry Allen that he was annoying. But then when they get to that last fight, he wants to impress this other Barry so much, because he's watched what he's gone through and what he's done and the fact that he's a hero. He wants to be that so bad that he turns into this villain that almost ruins everything. Like, it's just so interesting to me, but then ends up being the hero because he saves Barry, the real Barry, or Barry #1, right? So that was the one heavy impacting. And then there was a great emotional moment at the end with his mom when he resets everything. But
Well, that and the math, I really like the math equation thing where they tied that, where you can't solve everything. That little thread, I was like, that's writing gold right there. They did well with that part.
yeah. So there were moments where they really got it right. I just wish there was more of that.
Hard to
on
have
top of the funny.
Every moment land in 2.5 hour movie. You really got to be on your game.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it's hard, especially when you got an hour and 20 minutes of pure forced comedy and then 10 minutes of
garbage CGI taking it each part.
So bad. There's a couple things. So we're going to talk about the cameos right now, though. So many Batmans. Like,
oh my gosh, I was waiting for Christian Bale to show up in the crowd, and I was waiting for Robert Pattinson to like be in the courtroom. Then we got George Clooney at the end. I was stoked.
I was
stoked to see Clooney.
mad.
I mean, it made a little bit of sense because he still changed everything by moving the tomato cans.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, what? I was like, okay, you had this big moment about not changing anything, and then you still went and go change something. But we got Clooney as Batman. I was so happy.
I would have rather it been Christian Bale than Clooney, though, because the Clooney Batmans are so fucking bad.
Oh, they're terrible, but I love them.
They're some of the worst movies ever made. So when it was him, I was pissed. And apparently there was a deleted wow, I just fucking said his name and I can't get it out of my mouth now. The other Batman, Christian Bale. There was apparently a deleted Christian Bale scene.
Oh, that would have been funny.
Yeah,
I would have died.
Yeah.
Because Michael Keaton did a great job.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Ben Affleck does a great job being broody Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And then having Clooney show up at the end, I was like, okay, I see what you guys did there. I'm buying in. I enjoyed it. I'm just waiting for Robert Pattinson to make an appearance in The Flash 2.
Well, I hope so. I hope that, because here's my only issue. If this is being billed as a soft reboot, right, and this is canon within the new DCEU that we're getting from James Gunn, does that mean that I'm going to have to deal with Clooney as Batman again? Because they've already said that Pattinson's Batman is a standalone universe. It's not part of the DCEU, though they're going to continue to make those movies. It's a different universe. It's not connected to that. I know. But, and I get why. Like, look, I understand why James Gunn is doing what he's doing, but if it were me, you just got rid of in my opinion, the two best that are still. You got rid of Henry Cavill, you got rid of Ben Affleck. For whatever fucking reason, because I know Ben Affleck, it was more that he was done with it as much as everybody they were done with him. Henry Cavill obviously would have come back based on Black Adam. My problem is, look, I like Aquaman fine. I love the first Wonder Woman. We've talked about that. And if they can get back to that, I'm game on for Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman.
Oh, we'll see her on screen either way, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Keep her going. I'm fine with that. But if you're going to wipe out certain characters. Oh, yeah, me too. If you're going to wipe out certain characters, though, just fucking do it all. Sorry. Everything. Yeah. We'll release the Aquaman movie. We've already shelved Wonder Woman 3 for now. Like, we're just starting over. And I would be like, that sucks. I love having Henry Cavill as Superman. It's going to be hard to replace him, but I get it. Right now, I'm in this dual fucking feelings a little bit because I'm like, you've kept some of them and got rid of the great ones that I want to see more of. I don't care if I don't see more Jason Momoa. That's just the truth. I don't care if I see his Aquaman. I just don't. I'm on the fence about Gal Gadot because Wonder Woman 2 was garbage, and so I'm like, I love her.
It's more bad writing.
Sure, but I'm like, I can, based on my last interaction with Wonder Woman, I can do without it, right? Henry Cavill was the linchpin for me, and I love Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne, and he's fine as Batman, but I love him as Bruce Wayne.
He is the best Bruce Wayne. They're hands down. Like even the little scenes, I was like, damn, man, he just kills it.
So good. So I feel for James Gunn. It's not an easy position, but if I were him, I would have just started fresh on everything. So we're releasing the ones we're too far into production to can, and they're part of an outside universe, which we've now introduced with the Flash. Now we're going to start in a different universe, and we're starting fresh
with Nick Cage as Superman.
Yeah,
Tim Burton, that never happened, but I read about it. It sounds like it might happen.
No,
I might.
Hope so that's another one that happened.
He looks like Con Air met Superman.
Well, yeah, that's just like, okay, so let's talk about the cameos. First of all, Nick Cage, it was horrible. He looked horrid. If you've ever read the synopsis for that planned movie, it was fucking dumb. I mean, and it was bad, but it was bad when you get replaced with Brandon Routh in Batman Returns. Exactly. If it was that bad that they're like, well, we're just gonna do Superman Returns and fill it with a bunch of people that were kind of known, and then it's acted like it's so bad. That movie was so bad they didn't even include Brandon Routh in the cameos. You had to put a cameo in that didn't even exist instead of one that actually did. And so it's just like, what the fuck? And then the Christopher Reeve thing pissed me off. It actually made me angry. And the reason that it did, not because Christopher Reeve, I grew up watching those movies. That guy was Superman to me, right? But he had this unfortunate accident. And to me, he became a powerful spokesperson for disabilities and people with disabilities. And he only allowed, after his accident, people wanted to CGI his ass into shit all the time. And standing, and because it's this motivating thing. He only allowed it once. And it was in a commercial about research to help with handicap. I hate that word, with disabilities, right? And research to fund to overcome that. He is passed away, but by virtue of the fact that Warner Brothers owns the original, they can call it archival footage. No, it wasn't. That was pure fucking CGI. If they had pulled a scene from one of the movies that he was in, I wouldn't have had a problem. But you CGI'd his ass into something that didn't exist for this movie. He would not have given permission for that because they tried in past movies and he said no. I find that terribly disrespectful. I hate it. And I know that's my opinion. It can be out there. Nobody has to agree or disagree. It bothered me when he popped up and I almost walked out. Like, it made me that mad when he turned around. I was like, no, they did not. Anyway, I hated that moment. Hated it.
That's fair.
And I knew it was coming too when they showed George Reeves and Adam West. I was like, no, they're not going to do it. No, they're not going to do it. And they could have done it with Helen Slater as Supergirl that was standing next to her, and it would have been just as interesting and meaningful and would have connected to the movie that they made because Supergirl was in this one and left Christopher Reeve out of it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Other than that, there were some interesting cameos. Like, the other one that's pissing people off is the Jay Garrick, the weird Flash with like the Icarus hat, like, because his face looked a lot like the guy that played a version of Jay Garrick on the Flash TV show from CW, but he didn't get credit. They called it an unknown actor, but it looks fucking a lot like the dude. So I think they made some mistakes with these cameos, and I get why they did it, but I think it was a mistake.
Well, it's also kind of contradictory to your soft reboot.
Yeah.
Right? Like, cameos come later in the reboot, but if you're trying to start something fresh, you leave that out of it because that's always going to be messy, is bringing in older characters, cameos, even multiverse stuff is always messy, and you got to do it right. You almost have to like earn that right with your soft reboot. Like, you got to be 4, 5, 6 movies in that are decent, and not just keep rebooting it after the third one. So I see where you're coming from, because it's like you haven't earned those cameos yet, right?
Yeah. It felt like Muschietti went to WB and said, hey, can I throw a bunch of this shit in there for me? And I called it the shock value. Like, it was for shock value. It was like, oh, fuck, they did it. It was for the nerds to, at the end of the movie, to make you have this like hurrah moment of like, oh, that's so cool, to make up for how garbage the rest of your movie was. And like, that's what it felt like to me. And like I said, I would have been perfectly fine with all of it if they had just left Christopher Reeve out of it. Because Adam West, they got his trust, his family's permission. But there's nobody that has the power to give Christopher Reeve. And so they call it archival footage. Ooh, it fucking bothers me. Because that's the first time we've seen him standing, other than that one Super Bowl commercial since his accident. And I was like, I don't like that. But anyway, that's a dangerous, I feel like that's a dangerous movie trope that we could talk about
Yeah.
as a standalone episode, because they did it with Star Wars too, with Moff Tarkin, with the actor that plays Tarkin in Rogue One, and they got his family's permission. So I'm like, okay, if they're willing to have it happen, but that's a dangerous road to toe, pulling that in. And it's one thing to do it with living characters, like they've done it with Luke Skywalker, but Mark Hamill's there. You know what I mean? Like he's on set giving, that posthumous performances are tough for me when they weren't involved and have no say in it. But that's a weird opinion,
especially when they're like big names.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway,
like Christopher Reeves, Peter Cushing, like these guys are big time, old timey actors.
Yeah.
Well, with this new AI and everything, you could keep pumping out the music, keep making the movies, because at some point it's going to be like they never died if you wanted it that way.
Yeah. And that scares me. Like there's some moral implications there that, for me at least, I go,
morals.
And I don't have a lot of morals. I know that's a funny thing for me to say, because my morals,
I was gonna say,
my morals are pretty
JJ's
low,
moral compass. I was like, yeah.
But one thing that I'm very big on is personal choice, right? And Christopher Reeve doesn't have a choice in that situation.
Well, neither does R2D2.
Inanimate object, dude. I mean, and I'm talking
until it has feelings, Jay.
I'm talking. Well, and R2D2 is a character. I'm talking about a human being in Christopher Reeve and Peter Cushing.
Like, it's not Superman. It's Christopher Reeve.
I'm just trying to get Westworld on Jay, and then he's gonna have no answers.
I know. I don't like it. Anyway. But I don't have much morals, so for me to be mad about it, it's a little weird, because I'm usually like, whatever, do what you got to do. But I don't like people doing something. It's the same to me, and this is gonna be weird, and then this will be the last thing I say on it. It's almost like, and maybe this will help you connect with me, Mattson, on this one. It's like the college football thing, right, or college sports, that universities were using their name and likeness to make money, not directly, right, but they would sell jerseys with a number on it that are associated with a player, and those players weren't paid for the fact that they were using, but the university was. And that popularity of that player helped drive sales on jerseys and tickets and things like that. That player deserves, because they're being used, their likeness is driving revenue, to be able to have some choice or to be compensated. Christopher Reeve, Peter Cushing don't get those choices. They're being used as a way to drive, because people are saying, oh, Christopher Reeve's in this, he has a cameo as his Superman. Well, people are going to go, maybe my parents go see that because they love the Christopher Reeve Superman. How is that okay, right? Like, anyway, that's to me a very shitty, but it's an analogy that to me makes sense. I just don't like people using other people.
I didn't care about the college thing until universities were making the buku amounts of money they've been making for like the last 20 years. Before, I thought getting a free education where much of America and the world couldn't was good enough. But then when you got into these crazy buku millions, then I think the narrative changed.
Yeah. Agreed. All right, well, let's rate this thing. I'll go because I want to stop talking about it. Oh, man, I tried to like this movie. The Flash is one of my favorite characters. I don't care for Ezra Miller based on the things that he's done. That's my personal judgment. I know he needs some help. They need some help, so get them some help. But I feel like they should have scrapped this movie personally. But I went into it trying to like it. It had moments. I think there were some moments that were really good. There were some great story beats where they put some emotion into it. It had some funny comedy, but overall, like, I feel like I didn't gain anything, or this movie just felt pointless to me, because I know what's coming with the DC universe. The soft reboot, I feel like, wasn't done in a way that makes sense to me, and maybe James Gunn will fix my opinion on that in future movies, but right now this movie felt useless to me as an overall. And then I just didn't enjoy it. This CGI drove me crazy. The dialogue was kind of terrible in a lot of ways. Like, it was a lot of issues with this movie that I had. So, but it could have been worse. So I'm going to give it a 2 and go from there. There there was entertainment value to it, even though there could have been a lot more. It was very fucking long and drug on quite a bit because it was just forced shit. So there it is. 2 for me. I won't watch this ever again. Yeah, unless I'm forced to by violence. That's about it. So there it is. Mattson, you go, buddy.
I'll give it a 2. I think a lot has been said. It's funny that this podcast went as long as it did because JJ hated this movie, but talked about it the most. It's usually how these things go. I've been there myself. Go back and listen to Zack Snyder stuff. I go crazy. This movie, it's long. Like it's funny. I actually haven't had to say it because my counterparts have. It's very long. It's like 30 minutes too long at minimum. It's long. There's times it feels real slow. At times, part of the movie feels like we're repeating. Why am I forgetting Superman? What's the one with Henry Cavill? I don't remember what that's called.
Justice League?
Yeah, no, it's
before that.
Man of Steel.
Yeah, Man of Steel, which I love that movie, but we definitely have. I was like, oh, we got like 20 minutes of Man of Steel going on in here, which is fine when Henry Cavill's in it, but he's not in it. So there's just nothing that was compelling. But I will say I appreciated DC showing they could do some jokes. And I think if they can take that to the future of tying that with keeping it to DC's roots of being a hard, gritty movie, because this movie was not that. And I absolutely appreciate DC for doing that. I just think they need to have, at times they insert a little comedic relief. I'm hopeful for what's to come, but I just really, Ezra Miller as the Flash is not my cup of tea. And that's really just where this movie never really started and certainly didn't finish for me. So it's 2. Never watch it again. I have to say it because I love the guy in this. I'm going to miss Ben Affleck as Batman. Really going to really as Bruce Wayne, but man, he's just, even though he was only on the screen for like 3 minutes, maybe at most. I'm going to go back and watch Justice League or Batman vs Superman, the extended edition again, which I just watched 2 months ago because he's got that rolled down and I miss that. So just want to say that. Good job, Ben Affleck.
Yeah. All right, Alec, bring it home.
All right. I'm going to come in a little higher than you guys. I'm going to give it a 2.5. I think it was middle of the road. I wasn't upset that I went to go see this in theaters. And I was surprised that I wasn't upset to go see this in theaters because I was dragging my feet and dreading it the entire drive there. I laughed more than I thought I would. I enjoyed elements of the story. It did drag here and there. And, Man of Steel, I've seen it. I don't want to see it again like Mattson was talking about. But I was, I knew enough going on that I wasn't completely lost, which is very rare in any kind of comic book movie for me. So I was, on cloud 9, as it were. But I think it's a decent watch. I don't know if I'd go to the theater to go see it. Wait till it comes out on HBO. But as far as watching it again, I might if I have literally watched everything else that's available and I'm still trying to avoid my chores. But I think it was definitely middle of the road movie. I wasn't upset with it, so 2.5.
It's a lot of chore avoidance.
You'd be surprised at what I can get out of.
I appreciate that about you, my friend. I really do. So there it is. The Flash. Hopefully James Gunn picks some things up, does things better, and doesn't go down completely his Suicide Squad road, because that one felt forced too. But anyway, here's hoping for the DC universe moving forward. With that, Alec, tell everybody where they can find us when they're not listening to our ridiculousness.
Happy to, JJ. It's been a while. I'm kind of rusty on these things.
Yeah,
So thank you for tuning into our review of The Flash. Kind of surprising, but if you're going to take 3 years to release your movie, you might want to make it better just a bit with all the extra time that you had. We appreciate all of you tuning in to listen. And if you're looking for more content, you can find us wherever podcasts can be found, including Stitcher, Ghana, Apple Podcasts, or the Tube of You. Exciting news. Our June experiment seems to have been a success. So we'll be continuing doing that in future exploits where we kind of vote on categories for different movies and go back to some older stuff. If you would like to vote on the categories that we choose. The way to vote is to join us on Patreon, where every dollar earned goes towards finding Mattson his forever home. With that being said, I will turn it back to the Wazir of WAP, Jack Dunn's baby, a JJ.
Yeah. Did you talk about our current patron?
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't.
Because he's got a
What did
great
he
name right
change the
now.
name? Oh, Dick Pics.
Dick Pics and No Drama.
Yeah, special shout out to Dick Pics and No Drama. I hate you.
I forget what it was before that though, because in between our June recordings and this one, there was a whole nother name that I forgot what it was. But
I've repressed the memories.
I
Let
know.
me pull up my notes.
I feel bad because it was there and it was great. But yeah, Dick Pics and No Drama. I don't even remember where that one came from, but kudos to him. He always pulls out some great jewels of ridiculousness from our episodes and recordings and such.
Yeah,
I think it came.
He's a doozy.
I think it came from one of the post recordings that I put on Patreon for him to watch.
It sounds like something we talk about in post recordings.
Yep. Well, there it is. As always, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Cinemagic out.
Whoa!